Here we are at another episode of Varsity House Podcast. I mean, we got a very special one, as college football season is beginning and, coming to a start. We're excited to have Kirk Herbstreit on this episode. I mean, I reached out to you in the DMs and you got back to me. I'm sure you've caught a bunch of Notre Dame games and hopefully we're on the winning side of those games. But I appreciate you coming on. And then this episode, I have my co-host, Carl Jones. So appreciate both of your time. And I mean, I'm excited for this episode, excited for college football, and just excited to hear what you have to say, Kurt.
Yeah. I'm happy to be with you. I think we were talking before we got started. It's just, I think for all of us, it's been a pretty challenging off season, just trying to digest everything. And so just to see games back, guys out there playing, doing what they love, it's just nice to see.
Mm-hmm. Now talk about just like digesting everything really quick. I want to talk mostly about college football, but I feel like we have to, dive into NFL. And you becoming a regular NFL commentator now, what does your schedule look like? I mean, you're going from Thursday, you're calling the game on Amazon. Now you got to go straight to college game day. What's that like for you now?
Well, Sean, I'm sure you and Carl, now that you're kind of getting into this, have an idea of what goes into it when you're not on the camera. I've been doing this 27 years, and I've found the harder I work studying film, talking to coaches, and just doing everything that I do to be ready on the air. On the air is the easy part. Like if you're doing your job, it should look easy. Like if someone at home should be like, man, that's easy. I could do that. Like that's how it should feel if you're doing your homework, and for me, that's my joy. Like I love football. I just grew up a big football fan my whole life, and it never gets old. The stories change, the players come and go, and the passion's still there for me. So my week is full. I have 4 sons, 3 now that are in college, 1 that's still at home. He's a sophomore. And so if I'm not with my wife and my son, Chase, then I'm prepping. I'm just constantly prepping. Monday, only difference this year because of that Thursday night game. Sunday was kind of charge my battery back up because what I was already doing was kind of challenging, to do game day for 3 hours, many times fly to another location and call game, then fly back home. Sunday was kind of like my day to catch my breath. Well, now I can't. Like my first game on Thursday night with Al was the 15th. And so we'll be doing the Chargers with Herbert and Mahomes and the Chiefs in Arrowhead. And both those teams open the week before on a Sunday. So I have to now on Sunday be really plugged in to watching game film. And so I'll use that as a prep day now on Sunday. So really it's a 4-month kind of sprint to get through both of these seasons.
I have to ask, what does your wife have to say about this schedule? I mean, this is a lot of time that you're grinding, and trying to prepare because it's not a lot of downtime.
Man, you're right. I mean, that's going to be. We haven't got into it yet. We're kind of anticipating as we sit here, late August, early September. We're kind of guessing what it's going to be like. But until we get a couple weeks into the rhythm of it, we really have no idea. She's cool. I mean, she's been great. She's been with me now for 24 years, so pretty much my entire journey, she's kind of seen how I'm a manic with my preparation. See, I wasn't a big name. Like I played at Ohio, so I grew up in Dayton area, and my parents divorced, so we moved around a bunch. I settled finally in high school at Centerville High School, and I was fortunate enough to get a scholarship to go to Ohio State, and I was how it goes, 5-star all-world, and I fell flat on my face, for 3 years. I really struggled and thought about changing positions and kind of kept grinding through it. And, I thought about quitting, and my dad just kind of kept encouraging me and pushing me through it. And then I finally got to my senior year, and I was starting and the captain and all that kind of stuff. And I really learned a lot about the adversity that a lot of players face. And I never really forgot that. And I use that as kind of my foundation for these last 27 years on, I feel like I have something to prove. I've called all these national championships, done Rose Bowl. I mean, I've done everything in college, but I still approach my job like I'm an unproven commodity. So it just makes me, every year, I want to outwork everybody to try to show that I belong because of what I went through as a player. So that I don't think, once I change that, then I'll probably retire and not do it anymore. But I just can't imagine I'll ever be in a place where I'm like, yeah, I'm established, I'm good. I just can't ever get there, and I don't want to, by the way. But yeah, I'm a grinder by nature. It's just my background, and it makes me feel at ease when I'm on the air when I go through that process.
I definitely want to touch and talk about your playing career a little bit more, because one of the biggest reasons why I started this podcast is just throughout my career in college, I had a few injuries and caused me to miss full seasons. And so one of the biggest things that I wanted to point out is talking to athletes or talking to just individuals when they go through adversity, when they're going through tough times, like what do they do to battle through it, or what have they done, or the foundation that's kind of that brings them through to the finish line, you know, and kind of gets to where they at. Because at the end of the day, it's like when you're off for a season, or maybe in your position when you were the backup, no one probably talked about you, no one mentioned you until you became that starter. And so just throughout that time where you were just, like you said, you were thinking about quitting and you were going through adversity, what were some things that that you personally had to battle through, that you've leaned on, that you've learned in that type of, or during that time, that kind of developed you into the person you are today?
Great question. And for me, you know, my dad played at Ohio State and he was a captain there. So I grew up in a house where Ohio State was a dream, you know, from growing up in Ohio, especially in that era. That's all. I mean, if you're in the backyard, you didn't have video games, you didn't have a phone. We had to entertain ourselves. We were out in the yard playing and impersonating Ohio State games. You know, that's what we did. And in Ohio, in that era, especially, college football was everything. You know, I mean, I know you guys are in Cleveland. The Browns are probably big, and you know, the Indians and the Cavs. Well, where I lived in Ohio, it was all about Ohio State football. And then my dad played there and was a captain. So, like, for me, that was like a dream. And so when I got there and I fell flat on my face, I was just shattered. It was like beyond, I didn't even, if I would have been a first rounder, obviously I would have gone, but it didn't really matter to me. Like, all I cared about was playing for Ohio State as a kid. And then to get there and to see that dream that I had, literally every night I went to bed thinking about it, to see that gone, it was pretty traumatic to get through. I saw a sports psychologist. You know, that was not a cool thing to do when I played. I don't know if it still was a cool thing, but I remember going into his office and kind of looking over my shoulder, making sure none of my boys saw me, you know, going in there. And I would go in there and see him once a week. And it became almost like a lifeline for me and a turning point for me, where I went from feeling sorry for myself and why am I doing this, to this guy basically picked me up off the ground and gave me a reason to believe again. And, you know, my family and friends, of course, were always supportive, but they couldn't really relate to what I was going through. But this dude, he could. And so I give him a lot of credit for getting me through it and helping me learn about not quitting, and about, you know, when things don't go your way, it's, you know, you gotta continue to grind, because you never know what's around that next corner. And so I fought through a lot of down days and adversity to get to a point where I started to see a little bit of hope my junior year. Like, I'm starting to figure this out. I was a wishbone quarterback in high school, trying to learn how to do a 7-step drop. That's like, I don't know how to describe that to people, how different that is from one extreme to the next.
Exactly, right.
Yeah, but I was trying to, it took me 3 years to be like, you know, Junior Seau sacked me one time when I was a freshman, and I didn't even see him. You know, I mean, I was just like, let me go back to this right here, reading that defensive tackle, and you know. But I got through it. But again, that guy helped me a lot, and that's where I really started. I always was kind of an overachieving work ethic kind of guy because of the high school program that I came out of with our coach. But once I started to see life, and to be honest with you, I don't know if this was for you, Sean, but my teammates, when I started to kind of get through it, they really believed in me. And they believed in me almost more than I believed in myself. And so, man, that really pulled me through going into my junior year and then getting ready, be voted captain unanimously. We voted in the spring at the end of my junior year, and to be voted unanimous captain just told me what they thought about me. And then my confidence just took off because of their belief in what I could do.
Yeah. You talk about your teammates believing in you. And for me, that was a big point because every time I got injured, there was nothing negative that came from a classmate, from a teammate, from a trainer, from my family members or anything, even my friends. It was always, okay, you'll be right back. Like, we know you'll bounce back and things like that. And so that could be something little, but to where it's just like knowing that you have belief in everyone around you in your circle just drives you to be, the best you can be. And so like you, I was fortunate enough to be a captain my last year at Notre Dame, but you were, I think it was this second time in history that family members were captains. So your dad was a captain and you became a captain. What was that phone call like when you told him that news?
It was emotional, because of, again, what I'd been through. I walked off the practice field. He's the first one I thought of, I wanted to call and tell him. And he was emotional. I was emotional. And it just kind of felt like a culmination of a long journey where, again, I dreamt about that. And then to see it taken away and then to see it come back, even though it was just for that last year where I was really the main guy. But yeah, it was a special thing, and you just don't obviously see that happen very often. When you have your dad and then yourself in a school, like Ohio State, to have that opportunity. So yeah, it was something to this day is really important to me. If the coaches would have recognized the captains, I don't know if it would have been as powerful for me. But when the fact that the vote came from the players, I think made it definitely feel unique and something I'll never forget.
Now, so obviously you said you didn't have that shot at the NFL. Mm-hmm. Did you actually think about playing a little bit, or was right when you got done, was it just, I want to go into media, I want to start being a commentator, things like that?
Yeah, again, that's a great thing. I was a business major, marketing major. I graduated so my season obviously ends in the fall, winter. I thought about the NFL. Every kid thinks about it. I had a couple free agent opportunities, but it would have been a long journey. It was such a different time back then. And I just had a kind of a phobia against being that guy that couldn't let go. The guy that has to go to arena football. And back then there was the World League, and guys were going over to the World League, and they were doing whatever they could to just kind of keep that thing alive. I was done. Ohio State, I told you, was my dream. If the NFL would have been where I was selected early, I would have obviously gone. But what woke me up was trying to play for the Buckeyes. And when that was done, I was a business major. I started doing some interviews. I thought I was going to get into the business world. I didn't have a broadcast journalism degree. I didn't think about one day I'm going to be on the radio or be on TV. And I didn't know any of that. And then I started to do these interviews, pharmaceutical sales. There's a company called Worthington Industries. I just thought I would do the traditional route. I don't know if I was going to do financial advisor. I talked with a bunch of people about that. I was like your normal kid that didn't really know what I wanted to do. And then I called a local radio station that did some Ohio State, very few at that time, talk shows, but they did the Buckeye games on radio. Called them, and I was just like, hey, man, if you guys ever need a former player, love to, help you out. And they were like, yeah, pretty much thanks, but no thanks. That was in March. Well, then around June or July, they called me back and they said, it's crazy that you called us. The timing, we're going to an all sports format. It was like an elevator music station. We're going to an all sports format and we'd love to hire you. We'll pay you $12,000, no benefits, nothing. These other jobs were pretty lucrative, even back in that era. And they were like 75, 80, 90,000, company car, all that stuff that you're supposed to be excited about. But I wasn't. I didn't have a vision of where I was going, but it sounded like fun. Like, I didn't listen to music in my car. If you got into my car when I was a teenager, I listened to talk radio. You know, I was a big Reds fan, so I either listened to the Cincinnati Reds on the radio, or I listened to Chris Collinsworth, who was on 700 WLW, just because it was interesting to me to listen to talk radio. So I had a fork in the road. I could go traditional route, more lucrative, or I could go into this radio job having no idea where it would lead, but it sounded like something I had a passion for, sports. So obviously I ended up taking that. I passed on all those other opportunities. By the way, all my family, all my friends, everybody told me to take the more, sound option, more lucrative and more stable option. And instead, I went my own way on my own and made $12,000, which back then, coming off a scholarship check, I thought I was rich because I had 2 roommates and we were splitting rent and everything else. And then that's what kind of got me started. And I had no plan, I had no idea what I was doing. And it just kind of, doors just started kind of opening up for me as I kind of got into it.
And one of the doors that opened up was game day. I mean, it's funny speaking with you now, because I know as a kid, Sean feels the same way, I'm sure. Every Saturday morning, outside of the games that we were playing in middle school or high school and even at the collegiate level, what game they got to say? What they talking about, that 3 hour. You make sure that you tuned in by 11:50, because we got to see the picks. We got to see the picks. Got to do what special guests you bring on, and we got to see what type of shenanigans Lee's gonna pull out.
Yeah, exactly.
But I guess when you joined back in '96, did you envision it would be like this today? Because I mean, this is a nationwide phenomenon now, where everyone has to know what game they're saying.
No, when I started in '96, and by the way, how I got that job is crazy. I was terrified. I was like 25 years old when I did the audition, and didn't think I would get it. And then Lee Corso and I just had some kind of connection that the people making the decision, I think, recognized, and then they hired me. And back then it was only an hour show. When I first started, there was just a few hundred people around the set kind of thing. And then the Michael Vick era at Virginia Tech was the turning point. Virginia Tech was the first school and coach to embrace game day and realize, man, this is like a 48-hour infomercial. Like, they welcomed us. They opened up every door. They challenged their fan base to say, we need to show America how the fans, for the Hokies, how they support their team. And game day's coming here to Blacksburg, which was a huge deal to them. And they opened up, we put our set inside Lane Stadium, and they filled the entire home side of their stands. I think there was around 20,000 people that came to the show. And so from that point on, it changed. Everywhere we went, everybody tried to live up to that. And the second time it changed was one year we were at Penn State. I can't remember, but they all brought these signs, and before that we'd have a couple signs. And then Penn State one year, I don't know if they had a student challenge or what was going on, but there was thousands of signs that people had. And from that point on, it just, every week, here come all these crazy signs, and you're right. It's just kind of become a fabric of this sport that we all love. And we're kind of like, we try to kind of be a tailgate. College football has tailgating in South Bend or Syracuse or Columbus. We're kind of like a big tailgate party, like, you're going to laugh a little bit. You're going to get some XOs. You're going to cry a little bit. You're going to see a crowd behind us that's dialed into the show. They're such a big part. It's almost like they're on the desk. The crowd is so into the show. So we're lucky, man. If we did this for MLB or NFL or NBA or anything, I don't think it would come close to what we have. And I give all the credit to the fans and to the passion and history that we all love about the game.
That's I love the story of it, just how it started and everything, because I'm kind of going off on my own to try to do my own little I call it Varsity House official visits, and where we go into a school We do like Thursday night, and that's usually the shortest day of practice for the guys, for the players. And so what I've planned out is to be able to have the current players on, or maybe a special guest, a head coach or something like that, to where we can get in there, we can go to a restaurant or a bar or something, and we have a live conversation with current players as a I like to call it like an exclusive pep rally. Yeah. Where it's like it's limited tickets and you get the last bit from the players. And so I was able to I went week 0 last weekend on Saturday to Notre Dame and had 7 players on. We did it like a little show to where it's like each of them had 10 minutes. And we had some fans there, we had some reporters there and things like that. But it was an opportunity for the local fans to actually be in front of the players and hear them and get their shirts and jerseys signed and those things 7 weeks or 7 days out from kickoff. And so
that's cool. Hearing
that story motivates me, just because it wasn't a lot of people there, I'll tell you that. But yeah, it was just a new journey, something that I'm trying to start. And I think it could be really big, to where it's just like that one guest or that one game or that 1 week or something, like it's going to catch on and it's going to be cool by that point. So
yeah, Sean, I really applaud you for taking the initiative. You know, my one of my sons worked with Pat McAfee in Indianapolis this summer for 13 weeks, and he has a big interest in podcasting, and you know, it's such a wide open world that's out there. You know, that you don't no longer have to go to the Big Ten Network or the SEC Network or ESPN. I mean, you can do what you guys are doing. You know, it's such a different game today than when I got into it. So what you're doing, and you're brainstorming, you know, you guys are thinking outside the box. I mean, that's how you make something, you know. So good for you guys doing this, and what an incredible experience, you know, along the way. Because like me, who knows what next door is going to be there for you, and it's going to open up, you know. So just keep enjoying it. That's the most important thing. It's not about how much money are we making. It's about, am I loving it? Because if you love it, number one, it's enjoyable to do. And number two, your people that watch your show, they can feel that you love what you do. And when you watch somebody who loves what they do, it just makes you sit on your couch or sit around and watch, and you're enjoying because they're enjoying it, you know? So just stay in it and stay creative and stay open-minded to it with no expectations, right? That's the challenging part. Just enjoy. In my case, I just kept enjoying what I was doing. Didn't even really have my head on the horizon. I was just, man, how great is this? How great is this? How great is this? And all of a sudden it was like somebody had to, what? It was like, oh, okay. It wasn't like I was doing this, looking to see what's next. I was doing this, and I'll do this forever. I don't care. And so, and I really felt that from the bottom of my heart. So if I would have stayed in local radio, or, you know, I'd have Eddie George on, Joey Galloway, all these guys on, Mike Vrabel, they would all have a blast coming on with me. I would have been content, but doors are going to open for you guys too. Just, you know, keep being creative.
Yeah, no, I appreciate those words. You just mentioned some notable Ohio State guys for sure. And what I want to talk about is Brian Hartline, to where first off, I want to know what makes him just such a great coach, or from your experience, what makes him such a great coach, a great recruiter, and then what just makes that receiver room just so great and so talented every year?
Well, you guys know as players, when you're being recruited, there are guys that feel fraudulent and there are guys that feel authentic. This guy, I don't know if you've ever met him or not, but this guy is about as real as it comes. And so he's right off the NFL field when he's playing, you know, with the Dolphins and the Browns. And so he's just being himself. And he happens to be very, you know, he's been around receivers his whole life. And he just kind of has a very cool vibe about him without trying to be cool. He's just being himself. And I think people kind of see he's real, you know. And so when receivers get around him, I think they're able to be themselves around him. It's not like when I played, it's like we're all being ourselves, and all of a sudden coach would come in and we'd be all like, you know, doing that. With him, they just keep being themselves, you know. Now, he's very demanding on them. He pushes them. He's really, really proud of what they've created in that specific room. And so he feels, I think, a sense of the bar has been raised. We have a duty to live up to that or push it a little bit higher. And I think his real niche has become his ability to recruit, whether in the days when you guys were playing, I was playing, Ohio State was kind of in Ohio, might get into Michigan, might get into Indianapolis, maybe get into Atlanta, every blue moon get into Florida or Texas. These guys now at Ohio State, man, they're going everywhere to find the top receivers to come play for them. And so they got a good thing going, and he's right in the middle of it. I mean, Ryan Day deserves obviously a ton of credit, but Hartline has become an incredible asset for them most assuredly.
It's funny you say that. I was on 247 the other day just looking at recruiting rankings. I don't know why, but I look at Ohio State has like 2 of the top 10 guys and for receivers, and I'm like, yo, it's like a machine over there. Like, they continue to churn out and bring those guys to Columbus. I don't know what these kids from Florida are leaving, their beautiful weather to come up north with us, but clearly he's preaching something great. But outside of just the outstanding receiver room at Ohio State, because it's clearly one of one, what are some other position groups around the country that have your eye? I mean, I know Bama, they have the 2 edge rushers down there that are pretty unique. Are there any other position groups around the country that are on that level in your eyes?
Well, of course, what Georgia just had leave was as good of a group as a position I've maybe arguably ever seen. Their defensive line. Now they have Jalen Carter coming back, who is a pretty special player. He wasn't able to leave last year. But to answer your question on why these guys coming into Ohio State, because Ohio State's always had great tradition. But what's happened to me in recruiting is who's sending players to the NFL has never become more important to the 5-star guy. And so now Ohio State and Alabama and Georgia, the reason they just keep reloading, and they've always done that to a certain extent, but now it's going to a whole different level, is because Ohio State, they didn't used to sell NFL. Now they sell NFL. What I mean is when they're recruiting a receiver, they're like, receiver, huh? Come on over here. Here's my Rolodex of receivers that played at Ohio State. Oh, you play corner. All right. BIA is that what they call them, best in America. Come on, here are the corners that are. Oh, you're a defensive lineman. Have you ever watched the Bosa's or Chase Young? Come on over here. And then they'll send them stuff that says, our group that played receiver last year collectively made $175 million. You want to be part of that? So Ohio State used to ignore the NFL, and it's more like, hey, if you come here, you're good enough. Maybe you get to go to the NFL. Now they're like selling it. So, and it's working for them. I think it's a little different than, before they put a kind of a fence around Ohio, win the Ohio recruits and then go get a few around the country. Now it's the opposite. Now they're going all over the place. And it's because of the NFL and the focus on the prize recruit, on NFL or bust mentality. And that's their mentality. I don't agree with that, but that's where a lot of these recruits are. But I don't know. I have to, it's one thing to look at position groups on paper, but let's watch the first couple of weeks, and then you start to really kind of see who's got some really strong. I mean, the tight end group at Georgia is really scary. I mean, they've got NFL tight ends. I think they have 3 of them. So, I mean, you could find different groups. Michigan's offensive line, I think, could be really good this year. But I like to watch these guys all play for a couple of weeks and then kind of get a little bit of a better feel for what's real.
Now, I saw you gave your predictions, or Game Day gave their predictions for the Final Four, and I saw Desmond's picks, which were they were unique. They were good. Maybe some head scratchers, but if he's right, so he's gonna be a genius. So, do you have any sneaky playoff teams or just a couple potential Cinderella stories that caught your eye?
If you go each league, it depends what we consider Cinderella. Cinderella to make the playoff, or Cinderella like Illinois trying to get to a bowl game. It just depends on
Cinderella to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I would say in the Big Ten. In the Big Ten, I think Penn State, if their quarterback Clifford stays healthy, they were second in the nation last year till he went down at Iowa City, and they lost a couple in a row after that. But they could be a team that feels like people tend to forget about a little bit. In the SEC, I would say Georgia and Alabama is on everybody's mind. I think Tennessee maybe could be they'd have to really come together to be a playoff contender, but I really love Hendon Hooker and how explosive their offense could be. A&M, I don't know if they'd be really considered a sleeper. Alabama A&M after the shenanigans in the summer, that'll be a fun game to watch.
That'll be a fun one.
Yeah, I think Baylor in the Big 12. I picked that on our show last week. I just think that I really love their quarterback, Blake Shapen. So I think they could, and I'm a huge Dave Aranda fan. So I think they got a shot to surprise some people. In the Pac-12, I don't know if you consider Utah a sleeper, but they play Florida this weekend in the Swamp, traveling all the way across the country. So I would definitely put them in there. I don't know if there's anybody in the ACC. Clemson, NC State, Syracuse. I don't know. Carl, what do you think? You think there's anybody in the ACC? I mean, Clemson could. NC State's getting a ton of love. Wake lost.
I didn't know about NC State.
Can you tell me about the NC State love? I'm completely out of the loop on NC State. I saw top 15 and I was kind of curious.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with Devin Leary. He's a quarterback that I don't know how many people know about or follow, but he's a quarterback that can put it up and not turn it over. And he had a monster year a year ago. A lot of people are back around him. I think a lot of people respect Dave Doran, as a coach, and he's been there now for a number of years. So, and he's sent, by the way, a lot of guys to the NFL. So they're recruiting and developing very well. But they're a team last year that came close. They beat Clemson. They were 9-3, had a good run last year. They can score. It's just really going to be more about their defense. And by the way, they go to Clemson October 1. Always hard to win in Death Valley, but you're asking for a surprise team. I would obviously say they would fit that. What about Notre Dame? Are they a surprise team? You think they got a shot this year?
I think we have a shot every year,
Yeah.
But it's obvious there's a lot of new things. There's a new coach. We have Ohio State week 1, but I think there's a lot of talent on the team. And so I know you mentioned Georgia's D-line and how they were last year. I wouldn't say we're to that caliber just because they put out a number of first-round guys, but I would say our D-line is very stacked this year. And looking at them just with the talent they have, I think they can do some damage just rushing forward.
Wow.
We're a veteran group in the secondary. We haven't been that. I feel like we haven't been that in a long time. And so when we're able to get a transfer like Brandon Joseph from Northwestern.
What do you think of Brandon Joseph in the quotes that have been coming out, man?
I love it because we did an episode with him on Saturday. He was on our show, and so I love the quotes, and so I'm excited because if he balls, it boosts ratings for my show. But I'm also excited to see I want to see what he does because I've been hearing like Kyle Hamilton S type of player, like playmaking ability, and so he's ready. Like he told me he's itching for this game. Like he can't wait to be on this stage. So I'm very excited to see him play, and I also just think his leadership and his swagger will just will connect to a lot of players on the defenses, which we need, especially playing against a high-powered offense like Ohio.
He's the best corner this weekend because he's got a great group of receivers from Ohio State. Do you feel like Cam's the top guy?
That's my guy. Yeah, I like Cam. I think he has great size, and and then also Tariq Bracy in the slot. Like I think we're going to be able to throw a lot of different matchups at the receivers, and also Clarence Lewis on the other side. But like I said, this is a veteran group for the first time I think in a while, and so. Yeah. I'm already knowing Coach Mickens is doing his due diligence and scouting and prepping and scheming everything he can to stop him. So I'm definitely excited about him. And then the offense, I think we got a great offensive line. And I think we're just going to have to run the ball at the end of the day.
My favorite guy, at least going into the season, I'm trying to find him. He's that linebacker I think it's Maurice Lofau. Man,
Yeah.
2 years ago during COVID, they went to Chapel Hill in a really hyped up game right around Thanksgiving. And he is so athletic and so gifted and playing space. He's a headhunter. He's just kind of nasty, and I love that from those backers. He could be a guy. It looks like he's changed his number too. He was like 38 or 39 or something.
He went to a single digit.
He did. Yeah.
I forget which one,
I
but
think he's like eight, maybe 8 or
yeah.
But I can't wait to watch him. I hit Laurinaitis, who I know pretty well, and I'm going to talk to Marcus tonight. But I was like, "Tell me that guy's having a great camp." He's like, "Oh boy!" And he goes, "And he can sing." I was like, "Okay."
Yeah, he can actually sing. I got some videos of him singing. He's really talented.
Yeah.
He's from Hawaii, so
yeah.
Those boys are tough for sure.
Yeah, they produce great linebackers, have for many years. Yeah. So
now there's this assumption that Notre Dame can't win the big games, and so I always look at it to where it's like we were fortunate enough to be in those big games. Like a lot of teams don't get there, and so you probably watched them all, I'm sure. What are some of your takeaways, I guess, from those big games, and what is needed in order this weekend to maybe still win on the road?
Well, I think the turning point, and I can't remember, Sean, if you were on that team or not. I feel like the turning point was when Notre Dame went to Miami, and both teams were ranked, I don't know, top 5 maybe? It was
I think it was like a 3 versus 5 matchup.
Both teams were really hyped. I think I'm looking at it here. Miami was number 7 and Notre Dame was 3. And they lost 41-8, and it felt a lot worse. And I think the game got away from them early.
Yeah.
I remember talking to Brian Kelly the next year about it, and he said that they spent the entire offseason, and that was the year in 2018 they finished unbeaten. And he said they spent the entire offseason learning from that Miami debacle and how they let the atmosphere get the best of them. And he said their entire offseason training program was at any moment something crazy could happen, and they had to keep their composure. And he had like bombs dropping, music going, and all kinds of stuff. And they ended up having – and he also said he had a really honest heart-to-heart with, I'm not connecting with you guys. I need to connect. So it seemed like a turning point. And then from 18 on – I don't know, maybe there's 1 or 2 where they were embarrassed, but I feel like they were competitive from that point on, even in games that they lost. I know they played Clemson, I think that year, maybe in the semifinals, didn't go well. But I remember when they went to Athens a couple years ago, they battled like crazy. So I feel like it's getting better than it was. Remember the Alabama game, of course, and what was that, 11 or 12, the national championship?
12, yeah.
Yeah, that one didn't go well. But I feel like they're getting better. And, I feel like in their mind, they're thinking of going to Columbus not to be close. They're thinking of going there, obviously, to win the game. I don't know. Do they have the quarterback to win the game? I don't know enough about Buckner. I can't wait to see him. I watched him last year. He's kind of a change of pace guy for Jack Cohn. But now he's the guy, so I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of offense they build around that dual threat ability to kind of run and throw.
I guess for this weekend, where will this game be won and lost for both teams? I mean, what's the position battle where you think we all need to focus on because this is going to win and lose the game?
Well, I think there's a couple areas. If I'm a Notre Dame fan, number one is how do they handle being on the road week 1? We don't have preseason football like high school and the NFL. This is like the best you can do in training camp to get ready for this. Like if this were week 4, been on the road once, the hand signals, the different kind of communication that you need to be able to do. The offensive line sitting there on 3rd and 7, and here comes Jim Knowles' defense moving around, doing all these crazy things. And the communication is going to be critical in my mind. While we all focus on the quarterback and the skill, I'll be watching that offensive line to see how they're communicating and dealing with Ohio State's new defense. I think that's a big area. And then the second thing is I mean, I don't think it's overhyped. Like C.J. Stroud and Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then you add this next wave of, Ibuka, who's really, really talented, Marvin Harrison Jr., who's really, really talented. We saw what both those guys could do in the Rose Bowl. Just a matchup. Can they pressure Stroud? Can they not let him get into a rhythm? Make him hold the ball just another split second to get pressure to him. You just talked, Sean, about that defensive line. And if they can win up front and get pressure with 4 without having to get exotic, obviously that'll really help them. But you got to tighten up your coverage. The slot, you just mentioned how that you feel really good about, who they have in the slot. That's going to be a big, big matchup because he's going against the best slot receiver that I've seen in a long time. So that's a big one. But just can they disrupt CJ from finding that rhythm that he typically is able to find?
Now, you didn't get to call that Ohio State and Michigan game last year.
No.
And obviously, I know you probably gave your take on it just on a professional level. But emotionally, what were your thoughts like watching that game and just seeing your alma mater losing the way they did and also just for the first time in a very long time?
Well, I mean, yeah, you're right. The fan of me being a former captain, I was standing, we did game day there, and I stood, we were I can't remember where we flew. I think it might have been Oklahoma State, wherever we were going. We were able to stay for the first half. And so we stood right there. Michigan, man, they came out ready to go. They were tired of hearing about Ohio State. They came out to make a statement, and they did. Now, Ohio State kind of fought their way back. Garrett Wilson made an incredible catch at the goal line, got in, and they were hanging right there. And then we went up the, in Michigan, there's that one tunnel. We went up the tunnel just maybe 30 seconds before the clock ended. And as we're going up, here come the teams. So we kind of stepped into a little door to let them get through. Next thing you know, right there is a fight. They're in one tunnel and they're going at it, arguing with each other. And the reason I say that was, number one, it was pretty wild to be standing right there. And number two, it set the tone for the third quarter. And Michigan came out, again, almost added fuel to their fire. And so part of me, of course, was disappointed and sad for Ryan Day and those players that were trying to get back to a playoff. And the other part of me, more of a bigger picture view, is, man, that's really good for the Big Ten and good for the rivalry. Ohio State, I don't know what it is, but it's been a one-sided rivalry for 18 or 19 years. And so to have that big of a win for Michigan, I think adds some spice to Ryan Day and to Ohio State. So it kind of was tough to go through that day for Buckeyes. But I think bigger picture, I think it's really been a motivator for them to get into this season and what they learned from a down year of 11-2. But I think they're anxious to play just because of how their season ended. But yeah, bigger picture, it was a big day. I mean, Michigan's fans, there were 100,000 people on that field after the game, singing songs for a couple hours. So it was a big day for their fans for sure.
Now, the narrative coming out of that game and was the way that Michigan beat them. It wasn't like they, were dumping it all over the yard. It was in the trenches. It was physical backyard Big Ten football. And the narrative coming out of that is maybe Urban Meyer's teams were a little bit more physical in the trenches, while Ryan Day's teams are far more talented on the outside, putting the ball up and down the field. I guess, what is the difference between the programs under each head coach? Because obviously they're both excellent head coaches, but the way that they lost, I don't think I've ever seen Ohio State lose in that type of manner, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, Hassan Haskins, I think he had 5 touchdowns or something like that running the football. I mean, they won the battle. And think about Aiden Hutchinson. I mean, he's throwing offensive linemen around. So, yeah, it was an unusual thing to see. But, man, I think we all agree Ryan Day is – I don't know if I would handpick a different coach to be the head coach at Ohio State than Ryan Day. I didn't know a lot about him. I talked to Chip Kelly, who he played for and worked for, and Chip was kind of telling me this guy is the real deal. I didn't know he had this kind of leadership ability. I knew he was a great play caller, but I didn't know he had this kind of leadership ability. I don't know what his record is, but it's something like 34-3 in 3 years. I think he's lost the one game in the Big Ten to Michigan. He lost to in a bowl game against Alabama, lost another bowl game against Clemson. But other than that, he's doing a pretty good job. So I don't want to say I don't take anything away like, wow, if Urban were here, they wouldn't have lost the battle up front like that. I don't think that at all. I think it's more of Michigan, to their credit, that day in that snow on their home field, they weren't going to be denied. And they were really well prepared. I give them all the credit just standing at the field and watching. That offensive line, man, they were locked and wanted to get a piece of meat. Like, they were tired of hearing about Ohio State, and they went out and executed. So all I can do is tip my cap to them. But I really don't take anything away from that and think, God, Ryan Day's got to get it together. As far as the physicality, I think they just got to be better prepared and be ready to go next time they get into that environment. The wind was blowing, the snow was blowing. I think it affected the pass game a little bit, but can't really make excuses. You can just give your opponent a lot of credit.
I'm hoping my guys this weekend can recreate, that push up front that you just talked about. Yeah. Just because I do think that'll be obviously, again, a huge point this season that a lot of Ohio State fans and a lot of just college football fans are interested in seeing is that front seven built up to the standard that they're used to. And so I'm excited about that matchup for sure. And I'm excited about the atmosphere. I've never been able to go to an Ohio State game, especially like even a night game. And so I've always just been able to catch them on TV when we didn't have a game. So I'm very excited to see that atmosphere. And what are maybe some other atmosphere that excite you, maybe just like as a player or just now as a commentator? And then what are we expecting, or what are Notre Dame fans expecting when they come into the shoe Saturday night?
Outside of a couple outliers who have had too much to drink, I think you'll find people to be, hey, come on over to our tailgate. I think people will be very receptive and respectful. Again, every fan base has that 5% that we all just go like that too. So unfortunately, there'll be some experiences like that. But for the most part, I think it's going to be more of a just celebration, seeing those uniforms on the same field. So, what more could you ask for? So I think it's going to be a phenomenal evening. The weather looks good at this point. Those uniforms are going to be popping off that field, brand new turf that they just put down. I know Ohio Stadium probably as well as anybody. I would tell you that if Ohio State is playing Notre Dame at night, or Michigan, or Penn State, if they're highly ranked, or USC, I would say it's a 12 out of 10 atmosphere-wise. If they're playing a MAC school or they're playing a team that they should beat, it's a reactive atmosphere. It's more of a, hey, good job. Yeah, that was nice. There's a sack. They stand up and clap. I don't know if Notre Dame or Syracuse are like that. SEC crowds, they're kind of they create sacks. They create interceptions. Yeah. Ohio Stadium does that in this kind of game, but not your week in and week out. It's usually more of a reactive crowd. It won't be that way this weekend. It'll be hyped up. But LSU at night, Florida when they're good, Alabama's got a really good atmosphere. Oregon Ducks when they're good, that's a wild stadium out there. Penn State's whiteout. If you've never been and you're a football fan, you should take that in. It's a really special thing to see in person. But there's so many good ones. But A&M, if you've never been to a Texas A&M game, there's that one.
So I hear you're a big foodie, you're a food guy. And so what are some spots this weekend that we should check out in Columbus for sure?
Oh, gosh. See, I don't live there anymore. So I'll give you this. Go to an area called the Short North. And and by the way, I'll hit you back since we're communicating. I'll do my homework for you on that and try to give you 2 or 3 places to go. It depends on what you're looking for too. Some people like steak, some people like Italian. I mean, it depends on what you're looking for. But you did not go wrong if you go into that short north area. And campus, too. Campus has changed so much. They got a lot of nice restaurants on the campus. But if I were from out of town, I would try to get into the short north area, or the Arena District, too, is another area. That's more downtown, which is about 10 minutes from the campus. But that's straight on High Street. Just head straight north or straight south, and you'll run right into it.
Do we have time for just one more?
Yeah.
So this was a big one. I feel like I want, because I saw an article or a graphic on Twitter where they named the top 5 most athletic quarterbacks from Ohio State. But when I saw the list, I thought it was like the top 5 in the school history. And so I wanted to get your take on your top 3 quarterbacks in Ohio State football history.
Just total, just big picture, total.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm. That's a tough one, man, because it's not about who's going to be the best NFL player, right?
Yeah.
The best. Yeah. So, Justin Fields would probably be at number 1. If CJ Stroud has a great year this year, you could really make a really strong argument for him as well. JT Barrett. Dude's the most decorated quarterback that Ohio State's ever had. And I'll give you an old school one. Art Schlichter, for me, played in the late 70s, early 80s, he was recruited by Woody Hayes, but played for Earl Bruce. He was a really good one, too. Braxton Miller was dynamic, but I loved him. I've known him since he was in high school. He'd be up in there, but I give JT Barrett the edge just because he won so many games.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, again, thank you for, taking the time to talk with us. And I know you're busy. You got a lot on your plate this weekend, coming back home and, calling a huge game of the season already. And so we appreciate your time. Again, Kirk Herbstreit hopping on Varsity House Podcast. Thank you.
You got it, guys. Anytime, man.